My name is Nancy Cadwell. I'm with Montgomery County Extension, and I had an opportunity through Penn State University and USAID VOCA to take a 6-week program to Hungary and then a 1-week follow-up to Slovakia. Now this was back in the late 90s, so we're talking a few years ago, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I had 2 goals. One was to help establish and strengthen their 4-H youth development program. They did have some clubs started, but they were mostly teachers in an after-school setting. So they wanted to know more about what 4-H was and how we ran it in the United States. The other was they were in the process of trying to set up cooperative extension of sorts in their country, and they wanted me to help develop a curriculum at the university that could help teach some of the students about extension and 4-H and the value, because they looked to these students to be the future leaders of agriculture and extension, which they were, again, trying really hard to establish. So it was really nice. Penn State had been involved with several teams that went to Poland, so I happened to say to the professor up there, if you ever have anything that opens in Hungary, I would love to go. So he kind of made that happen, and it was really nice, really good experience, till I found out, of course, I was the only one going. Everyone else had gone on teams. But it was a challenge. It was really good. I went and had an opportunity. I had some people that I worked with, but stayed on my own, and we had a blast teaching at the university. I got to travel and see different schools, different rural areas, even though I was mainly based in Budapest. And went to gypsy schools. We went to all kinds of things, and it was really an eye-opening opportunity for me. But we, again, had an opportunity to work there and see how 4-H could expand, and I was really impressed by the teachers and their volunteerism. And it's interesting because over there, if you understand that they had just gotten out maybe 10 years earlier from under communism, so the word volunteer had actually a negative connotation at the time, which was very interesting, and they couldn't understand why would you do something when you weren't getting paid for it. So that was really a challenge, and it was really nice. We worked, most of the people that spoke English at that time happened to be the upper high school or college students, so they often served as the interpreters. The adults often didn't have the English language skills at the time. I think probably one of the most successful things that came out of there was an exchange trip we set up. So we were able to take some students over to Hungary in the following year, and then also hosted some of their teens and students that came back here for a month in our country. And I know that the students that went, their eyes were really opened. For the host families, many of them learned about a culture and a country that they vaguely knew was somewhere over there in Eastern Europe, but they weren't quite sure what it was about. And I think one of the things that is really important, in addition to the fact that whatever university sends you over becomes a trust factor, it becomes a link, it's very well respected internationally because they know you're there to help and to share. But I think for most of us, it was understanding, and when we learned about, again, the communism, it really helps you understand your own country, to value our freedoms and our democracy that we often take for granted. So that was one big thing that really happened. We continued to send them project books that they would translate into Hungarian. We continued, Dr. Juhász had come over several times, so it was an ongoing program that lasted over a couple of years. One of the neat things, again, Hungarian is my background. All 4 sets of grandparents came from Hungary, met in the United States, got married. So that instantly developed a little bit of a trust factor. I grew up listening to the language and listening to the music. I could only speak a little. It's a very, very difficult language, probably the most unique and difficult language to speak, maybe except for Russian. But it was really something that helped bridge that gap. And I didn't get to mention much about Slovakia, but there was a 1-week follow-up through USAID, and I worked with a Peace Corps volunteer. So that was another link that Extension could do if it's set up appropriately. And he was running a 4-H program there. So it was really nice to be invited to people's homes and have them open up, because again, That was another country that had just come out from communism, and they didn't trust people. You didn't trust your neighbor, your family was okay. But to be invited into somebody's home was amazing. And they were trying to set up a cooperative in this little village of Tulchik because they had a major highway that ran through it, but they had no business, no coffee place that a truck driver could stop. So they wanted to incorporate their local crafts, coffee, bakery, and have a little place to stop for these people and do a little business that would help the village. So they had never run a business meeting as you and I would take for granted. And for those of us who work in 4-H, sometimes we go, why do we do, business meetings after all? And you really, really value that. And it was really fun to take this group of adults and go through the rudiments of a business meeting and to vote on something. So that was cool.